Okay,
All
let
right.
me get started. This week's history class really is focused mostly from Parshas Toldos. This is in the book of Bereshis, and we're up to that part where we're now going to be talking about the twins. So we had this story last time about Yitzchok and Rivka and finding the wife for Rivka and bringing her home, right? So they were childless. The first 10 years, they don't count because Rivka had come into the marriage at 3, and they weren't living as husband and wife. They were just legally engaged and dedicated, right? And so, but for 10 years after that, they also didn't have children. And so we have this concept what we've learned out is that if a couple is childless for 10 years, the man has to find another bride, because the man is incumbent upon the man to be fruitful and multiply. It's his mitzvah. Obviously, she's invested, but it's the mitzvah incumbent upon him. And so they went to Har HaMoriah. This was the same place where Yitzchok had been tied for the Akedah. And so they went to this holy place. And there they davened, but different from sometimes we've seen in the past, where Abraham already had children from another wife. Yitzchok and Rivka both prayed not only that they should be blessed with children, but they specifically should be blessed with children. Yitzchok prayed that he should be blessed for children from this wife specifically, and Rivka davened that she should be blessed with children from this husband specifically. And what's interesting is that in their tefillos, it says that Yitzchok's prayers were answered. So what's the deal? Why his, not hers? They were both davening for the same thing. The answer is that you can't compare the prayers of a tzaddik who is the son of a tzaddik to someone who's a tzaddik with a less than pristine background. And obviously Rivka is coming from, idolatrous parents. And so his tefillos are the ones that are accepted prior to hers. And she was blessed with a child and became pregnant. And yet she had the strangest experiences with this pregnancy because she had this internal tugging, almost like a battle going on inside of her, which truly there is. And there's also the tugging every time she'd walk by a shul, a house of worship, of God worship. She'd feel this tugging out, and yet she'd feel the same thing when she passed the place of idolatry. So, like, what is this kid, schizophrenic, or what is already going on over here? This is, and the pains were horrendous. She asked the other gals, are you getting the same thing? No, not like that. No, that's already, So she sought out advice from the prophets of the time. She went to Shem and Aver. Shem and Aver were, again, the oldest around at the time. They had the sons and grandson of Noah, and they've been around for a long time. And they were, they were still on the path of Torah mitzvahs from the time of Noah, not necessarily teaching the world about it, but whoever would come to them. So unlike Avram, who went out to change the world, they were staying very insular and studying. And so she went to them to find out what's going on. And Shem explained to her with prophecy that you are carrying twins, and the world isn't big enough to contain the two of them, let alone the womb. And he let her know that she's carrying two great nations, and these two great nations, only one, they will be fighting and constantly at war, and only one will be able to overcome the others. So one of the other is always going to be on top. One of the other is always going to be, the most powerful, but they can never share. It's never going to be a place of sharing. And so the wrestling already began within the womb. When And of course, she had her questions like, "What did I ask for this?" Like, she wasn't happy with this. There is an opinion that she could have borne all 12 tribes, but because she complained to God, like, if I'd have known, I wouldn't have done this, right? I'd only had an inkling what was going to come, and I wouldn't have done this. And so she was not blessed to raise all 12. And in fact, it is said that in the birth process, Aisav made sure there would be no more children coming. That he was not going to share the world with anybody else, right? He tried to stop the birth of his twin at the same time as well. So we say that when Aisav was born, so Aisav was born asa, already made, right? Meaning that he came out hairy and with a mouthful of teeth, like an animal. He was born like an animal with all fully all hair and teeth in there and everything ready to go, right? Asa, already born, ready made, right? And from the very beginning, there was always this war. He was trying to prevent Yaakov even from coming into the world. He destroyed his mother's womb, but Yaakov held on to his heel and would not let him escape alone from the womb. And so that begins this challenge, right? And generally speaking, throughout world history, there's always been this struggle between the two. So as they're growing up, you think about this for a minute. Like, can you imagine growing up where Yitzchok and Avraham are your teachers? They were homeschooled, and they were homeschooled by Avram and Yitzchok. So it was an amazing time. And as they were growing up, obviously in this household, there were malachim, angels coming and going all the time. It was an amazing household, and they grew up with these type of things going on, and you really couldn't necessarily tell the difference behaviorally between the two boys as they were growing. Aisav was already learning how to trap people with his tongue, and be able to say the things that people want to hear, not necessarily what's true. And Yaakov was called Ish Tam. Ish Tam, it was a simpleton. Now, simpleton we think of meaning not intelligent, but here the simple idea of simpleton meaning that what you see is what you get. There was no pretending over here. Very straightforward. We have one of the common epitaphs on the Jewish grave is Ish Tam V'Yashar. It's a quote regarding Yaakov. Ish Tam V'Yashar, a person who is simple and straightforward. Simple and straightforward. No games, right? A truly honest person. So Yaakov truly was embarking on a life of Torah and mitzvahs, and a passion for learning, a passion to understand. Would that he could just stay in a tent and learn Torah all the days of his life, right? And Aisav was already becoming a hunter who roamed the fields. And again, as I mentioned before, a trapper, not only trapper of animals, but able to trap people with his glib tongue. So as long as Avram was alive, Aisav was careful. He towed the line as best he could, right? But at some point, it was going to be too much, and he was going to get revealed. And so God had mercy on Avram. He didn't want Avram to be exposed to what his grandson's behavior was going to be like. And so he took off 5 years from Avram's life. Instead of dying at 180, he died at 175. So he shouldn't see the negative stuff, right? And Aisav was able to fool his father for multiple reasons. One reason he was able to fool his father is because he was very good at it, right? But also Yitzchok would look at potential. His focus was always on the potential, and Aisav had tremendous potential, but he didn't necessarily choose to go the right way. So he was able to fool his father because his father saw the potential, and Aisav would do things like, how do you tithe salt? Well, we don't tithe salt. Salt doesn't grow. We don't tithe salt. But he would ask the question and making the impression that he's that religious, right? So Yitzchok was fooled, partly because he wanted to see all the best in his son, and partly because he felt that if he would continue to treat him always with goodness and kindness, then that will turn him. It's a great philosophy, but it doesn't always work.
Doesn't work today either.
Doesn't always work. Rivka, on the other hand, Rivka couldn't be fooled because she'd already spoken to a prophet. The prophet already told her what's going on. Right? So she already saw the difference. So she could see through it. She could see through the whole thing because she already spoke with a Navi. The prophet had already told her, this one's going to be a murderous animal, and the other one is going to be, totally holy. So when Avram passed away, so what happened that day? Obviously, Yitzchok is now sitting shiva. He's mourning, and so Yaakov went to the kitchen to start preparing a meal for his father's in mourning. And coming back from the cemetery, you come back and go the mourning process, right? He prepared lentil soup. Now, why lentil soup? Lentils are round. Today, we oftentimes talk about eggs, boiled eggs, right? Hard-boiled eggs. The idea of round is the cycle of life. Mm-hmm. Just as you're mourning today, there will be simchas to come. There'll be highs, there'll be lows. It's a cycle of life, and so don't get caught up just here and only the sad things. Life comes and goes, right? What was Aisav doing that day? Well, Avram passed away so that he wouldn't see what Aisav would be doing that day. Aisav was out hunting, and he saw Nimrod. Now, this is not the Nimrod of Avram's time that he contended with. This is Nimrod's son, who is now the new king, Nimrod. And he had procured, previously, Nimrod had procured the coat of Noah. Noah had a coat that had animal figures all over the coat, and it was a coat that went all the way back to Adam Harishon, Adam the first man. It was a coat from Gan Eden, from the Garden of Eden. And this coat had a specialty to it, that whoever wore this coat was essentially king of the world, right? And Adam had worn it, Noah had worn it, Nimrod now had it. Nimrod was known to be a great hunter. Why? Because he wore the coat, and the animals would come in abeyance to the coat, and then he would slaughter them. So was he a great hunter? No, he just took advantage. But when Aisav saw this, he desired. And once he desired, he went out to have it. Mm-hmm. He murdered the guards, he murdered the king, he took the coat, and he came back that day from his first murderous rampage. And he came back exhausted from all of his efforts. And he came back and he found Yaakov, his twin, is sitting there preparing lentil soup. And he was just so exhausted, he said, gimme, 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 gimme. Pour that red stuff right down my throat. So Yaakov, first of all, he prepared this for a mitzvah. He's not giving it away. That's first off, right? He prepared this for a mitzvah. He's not giving this away. But at the same time, he also sees an opportune point of legally purchasing from Aisav the birthright. Because how could this guy who just went on this murderous rampage, how can he have the birthright of serving in serving God for the family? Up until this time, the firstborn would be the priest of the family. The firstborn son would be the one to carry out all the priestly responsibilities for the family, and he would be like the holy one of the family. And he would get a double portion because of all the responsibility he takes on and everything else, right? And how Yaakov he couldn't sit with the fact that Aisav would have that, representing the family in this way. And so he offered the trade, a purchase of the lentil soup for your birthright. And so Aisav said, like, what do I need the birthright for? What's the birthright? Well, you have the responsibility of doing sacrifices for the family, which, of course, if you do them wrong, you get a death penalty. And so this back and forth of like, what do I need the birthright for? I'm out. And so he sold it. Yaakov said, I want to sell it clear as day. Like there's no ambiguity to it. And so there was a document that was signed, and he traded it off, and it was an official sale, the lentil soup for the birthright. And then he gave him the lentil soup, and he finished this off. But in the meantime, having disavowed the birthright, having given up the birthright, right? And so in that sense, God said, well, if you don't want these responsibilities, you don't want the birthright, so then you don't need the blessings that come with it. And so we'll find out later on that when Yaakov goes to trick his father into the blessings, his father finds out that Aisav has sold the birthright, so his father then acknowledges that the blessings went to the right person because he's the one who actually has it, the birthrights, the responsibilities. So Aisav has sold the birthright for lentil soups and bread. We will later also see in the Torah that God calls Yaakov's descendants Yisrael. This is in the Parsha Shemos. Yisrael, my son, my firstborn. So he calls Yaakov. He validates even in the Torah that sale by having called Yisrael, Yaakov, my son, my firstborn, and he validates that. Next test, as if there's not enough, all right? The next test for Yitzchok is that there's a famine in the land of Eretz Yisrael. Now, the family tradition so far, when there was a famine, Avram had just come to the land. There was a famine land. So where did he go? He went down to Gerar, and then he went down onto Mitzrayim. He went to Egypt. And he spent the years of the famine down in Egypt. So Yitzchok heads for Gerar, the border area. He heads down to Gerar, and he has a prophecy from Hashem. No, you can't go. Yitzchok was a korban oila, a holy sacrifice. He was brought up as a sacrifice. Now, he wasn't shechted, wasn't slaughtered, but he was brought up as a sacrifice, and he had a status of a sacrifice, and that can't leave the holy area. So God said, even though there's a famine, you can't leave the land. You have to stay here. And we'll find that Yaakov, his grandson, he'll go down to Egypt, right? So Avram will go to Egypt during famine. Yaakov will go to Egypt during famine. Yitzchak, not allowed. He has to tough it out. Granted, we already said that Avram is Ish Chesed. Avram was a man of great kindness, and Yitzchak was a man of severity, of strictness, and first and foremost upon himself. So, being that that's his personality, God says you can't go down to Egypt where it's easier. He wasn't looking for an easy life, and he's not getting one either. So he stays in Gerar, and there in Gerar, the Philistine, which is not to be confused with modern day Palestinians, completely different peoples, no relationship whatsoever. The Philistine of the time, Yitzchak again was also afraid, like Avram, that he'll be killed for his wife, which is a common thing there. Mm-hmm. So therefore, he asked her again, say that you're my sister. but they, the king Avimelech was watching because he really had a desire for Rivka, and he was watching, and he saw that their behavior was not that of a brother and sister. It was more of a husband and wife, the relationship of such, right? And so he finally came and he contested him, and Yitzchok said, I thought you'd kill me for it, right? And knowing what had happened previously when Sarah had been kidnapped, so Avimelech didn't want to have any of that. He didn't want to have any of that, right? So therefore, he made a decree to all of his people: don't mess with these folks. Leave them alone. Stay far away, and don't mess with them. In the meantime, Yitzchok, because of Yitzchok's presence, the area was blessed. Yitzchok would plant, and he would get 100 times more processed from that which he planted. The seeds he would plant, he would be tremendously blessed, and so in his honor, essentially, you could see that he was blessed with food, and he was able to sell it to all the people around, and be able to become very tremendously wealthy because of the blessings. Hashem proved the greatness of him by blessing him tremendously, even in the land of Gerar, even in the land where everyone else is suffering a famine. He was blessed with tremendous produce and was able to become tremendously wealthy from it. At some point, the local saying was that the dung of Yitzchok's mules was worth more than Avimelech's gold and silver. So everything that Yitzchok worked on, he became, productive. So strife, of course, starts opening up. What happens? Avraham, when he had dwelt in the land of Gerar, so he had dug many wells, and there were lots of arguments, and eventually that was overcome. Now Avimelech, they've filled in all the wells that Avram had dug, and Yitzchok is going about undigging all of those wells, and Avimelech is coming back and arguing each one of them. No, that's our well. That's our well. Now that you've done the work, that's our well. And so eventually, it finally comes to a well where they don't argue, and he calls it Rehovot. Rehovot being a wide space of no contention here, right? So this is finally a place where there's no contention. They continue to grow, and they continue to be very wealthy there. And at some point, Avimelech comes and says, "You know what? You guys are overpowering and over wealthy. Could you get lost?" But more importantly, he wants to reestablish the peace treaty between the two families, so that they'll be able to get blessings and not curses. And as Yitzchok grows more and more wealthy and more powerful, he wants to make sure that there's no agitation between the two families. So back to the twins. You know why of all the animals that are not kosher, why is it that we despise chazer, pig? Why is it we despise chazer? There are two simonim, two signs for an animal to be kosher. It has to chew its cud, it's an internal double stomach, and it has to have a cloven hoof. So there's an internal sign and there's an external sign. Most of the animals, by and large, the animals that have, most animals don't have either sign. Fine. A horse, it doesn't have an internal sign, it doesn't have an external sign. Fine.
Just a horse.
Just a horse, right. But those animals that have one sign and not the other, the internal sign will be kosher. The external sign will be they don't have a cloven hoof. The pig is the only one that externally claims to be kosher, but internally is not. So the chazer, the pig, represents to us someone who is not what he appears to be, someone who's deceitful, and what you see is not what you get. He's pretending to be something he's not. And this was Aisav. Aisav was the epitome of this. And even when he saw that again his father had gotten married to Canaani, so he married Canaani girls, and he even renamed one of them so that that it would have a Jewish name, a Jewish sounding name. Avivama was changed to Yehudis so as to be able to deceive. They had idolatry in the house, and Rivka managed the idolatry better than Yitzchok because she grew up with it, right? Yitzchok had been tahor, holy, from birth. He grew up in Avram's household. He was never exposed to any type of idolatry. He was a korban oil. He was a sacrifice himself up on the altar. He was totally holy. And so the idolatrous incense that Aesop's wives would burn was detrimental to Yitzchok. Rivka managed it. She grew up with it. She was immune to it. Didn't faze her. But Yitzchok, it was very bad for him. In fact, it was the cause of his blindness. How did it cause his blindness? The fumes from idolatry got into his holy eyes and blinded him. There's also a medrash that says that when he was on the altar to be sacrificed up at Har HaMoriah in his earlier years, the tears of the angels fell in his eyes. And those holy eyes could not bear the incense of the idolatrous wives of Aisav. And so he went blind from this. There's also a medrash that says that, again, Yitzchok being the one who is always making an accounting of things, always to be very strict on himself. So Yitzchok was the one who asked God for illness before we pass so that we'll know to, make amends, to clean up the accounts and clear up our, all of our accounts. And so Avram had asked for signs of old age, wrinkling and hair and white hair and frailty. Yitzchok had been the one to ask for illness and things to help the person know your end is coming. You need to get your act together, right? So when Yitzchok reached the age of 123, so he wasn't sure how long he was going to live. Usually we get worried about the age when our father passes away, but he wasn't sure whether that was going to be from Avram or the time, what that's going to look like, right? So Yitzchok decided that it was time that he needs to give his blessings for the next generation. So what does it mean giving blessings? Typically, we talk about giving blessings to people. You bless your children, things like that. But there's something special here. Remember that God gave to Abraham the power to bless. And I will bless those who bless you, and I will curse those who curse you, and I give over the power of blessing. So when Avram would bless someone, it's not just a nice thing. It's changing the world. When Avram went to bless someone, it made a difference. It changes how things pan out. Gave the power to bless, he gave to Yitzchok. Yitzchok is now about to give over the power to bless, which has a strong impact, not only on the person he gives it to, but it's giving him the power to bless, the capacity to turn around and bless others and change their lives as well. It's nothing to be taken lightly. And one of the things that we've learned in our generation, the Rebbe has stressed how important it is. We all have the power to give blessings. We need to be giving blessings. We need to bless people as often as we can, and especially Kohanim who have been given a formula to do that blessings. They shouldn't do it in the synagogue and just on holidays. They should do it at any special occasions. I was at a wedding just last week, And when the chassid goes to cover the bride with a veil before they go to the chuppah, a Kohen is called up to bless the kala at the bedekin, the covering of the face, and then again under the chuppah, again a kohanim are called forward to bless the couple, to bless the marriage. So blessings are a very powerful thing, and we should be doing more of it. I remember the Rebbe talked about on your birthday, your mazel is gaiva, your personal mazelis. There's no real good translation for mazel. It's translated as luck, but it's not. It's not. Mazelis are also translated as the constellations, but it's essentially your power for good is stronger on your birthday. And the Rebbe said one should use that to benefit others, and you should give blessings on your birthday. So it's an important thing to give brachas on one's birthday, to bless others, to use that special power. So Yitzchok wants to bless Aisav, the firstborn son, with the power of blessings, not only to give him blessings himself, but to give him also the power to bless others. And he also, again, we'll come back to the idea, he felt that which he would bestow upon Aisav would help Aisav use the koyach, the power that he actually has, for good. That he'd let go of the channel, the direction he's going, and see the right path, that he's given blessings from his father to do great things. So he calls his father, Yitzchok calls in Aisav, and he tells him, listen, I want you to go out and shecht for me, to trap and shecht, proper shechting for me, some meat, and cook it the way I like it, and prepare it the way I like it, so that you'll come and you'll serve me. It'll elevate my spirit. Number one, that my son is doing what I asked him to do, and number two, a flavorful meat, special, good meat. It'll raise my spirit, and with that raised spirit, I'm going to give you blessings, brachas. And he hoped that these brachas would make a change in Aisav. And Rivka heard this exchange, and so she heard the conversation. She knows which one is who's who and what's going where. Again, she heard from the Navi, the prophet of the generation, where this is going, and so she wanted to make sure that Aisav did not receive the brachas and the power to give brachas, right? And so she called in Yaakov, and she said what's going down, and that he needs to go get 2 lambs from her stock, because she had part of her marriage contract was the use of 2 lambs a day, right? And so, especially because this was Pesach, this was Erev Pesach. That night is Pesach coming in, even though they weren't given the Torah yet, and they didn't exodus from Egypt, but the holiness of this occasion, this time, has already been there. And so Avram, Yitzchok, and Yaakov used to keep these Torah mitzvahs before they were even given. So she said, bring me 2 lambs for your father, and we'll make from one his special meal, so he'll bless you, and we'll make one, we'll use the Korban Pesach, the Paschal lamb. I'll cook them and prepare them, and you'll go in. And Yaakov was like, ah! And you're asking me to go deceive my father? I know how to do that. I can't do that. What are you kidding? And she says, no, you're going to have to go. And he says, what if I get discovered? I'm not going to get a blessing. I'll get the opposite of a blessing. And his mother takes that responsibility. He says, but Mom, if he touches me, he's going to see I'm not this furry beast like Aisav. And so she takes the hair from the hides from the animals, and she covers his arms with the hides, and she covers his neck with the hides, and that area which is exposed is going to be covered with hair, with fur, right? And she says, don't worry. How many times does your mother tell you don't worry, right? Anyway, he has no choice. He has to honor his mother. So even with all of that, he goes and fulfills his mother's request, and he comes back, and she prepares the meals, and she prepares the garments, the fur over him, And one more thing. She takes the garment from Gan Eden that Adam had, that Noah had, that Nimrod had, that Aisav stole from Nimrod and murdered him. And she gave that to Yaakov. Now you ask the question, why is that in her possession? You think Aisav trusted his wives? What are you kidding? He married them. He knows. So he kept this precious possession in his mother's, under his mother's possession, and kept it safe over there. She takes it out. She puts it on Yaakov. So Yaakov has got the coat on. He's got the fur on, and he's got the meals. And he heads into his father to get the blessings. Right. It happens to be again Hashgacha Pratis, divine providence, a gift from God that Aisav, when he went out, he was such a hurry to get his dad's blessings that he ran out without picking up that garment that would make him successful in his hunting. Right, so he spends the day trying to catch something. He can't because he went out without that garment. But his head is full of himself, so he's out there doing his thing. So Yaakov enters. Yaakov is a tzaddik, and he's wearing the garment from Gan Eden. And the reach nichoyach, the beautiful smell of Gan Eden is diffusing from the garment and from Yaakov the tzaddik wearing it. And as he walks into the room, Yitzchok can smell the smell of Gan Eden. And he smells this and he says, wow, who are you, my son? Who are you, my son? Who are you? And Yaakov answers, I am, pause, Aisav, your firstborn. I am, and Aisav is your firstborn. The is softer, right? It works better in Hebrew. Aisav, your firstborn, right? But there's this pause between. I am Aisav, your firstborn. So he didn't technically lie. Obviously, it's very uncomfortable in the deceit that he's doing. But, Mama said, right? And Mama ain't happy, ain't nobody happy.
That's straight.
So he says, I am Aisav, your firstborn. Please arise and eat of the meat that I have hunted so that you may bless me. And Yitzchok responds like, how'd you get back so quickly, my son? And obviously Yaakov is terrified about this whole conversation going on because he's worried he's going to get caught, right? And he said, Hashem, your God, caused the animal to cross my path. And Yaakov is thinking like, that does not sound like Aisav. First of all, he doesn't say please and thank you. And he doesn't talk about Hashem, your God. That doesn't, right? So he reaches, he says, come here, I want to check you out. And he pulls him closer over puts his hand on his neck and on his arm, and he pulls him closer. And he says, and it says in Chumash, it says in Torah, Akol kol Yaakov, Yadayim Yadei Aisav. The voice is the voice of Yaakov, but the hands are the hands of Aisav. And with these words, when Yaakov heard these words, his heart melted with fear, and his knees began to shake. And it says that the Malach Gavriel and Michael came to support him, because he's mortified here. But with this support, his father takes from the food, and he eats, and he drinks, and he's ready to bless his son. He's feeling really good about it. I'm going to go back on that verse. Hakol kol Yaakov Yadayim Yadei Aisav. The voice is the voice of Yaakov. The hands are the hands of Aisav. This phrase is actually a very critical phrase, because we'll see in Halacha and in the Talmud, the strength of Yaakov is his voice. Davening and Torah and mitzvahs, that's the strength of Yaakov. Aisav's strength is his hands, his warrior hands. And so they're going to see the battle between Yaakov and Aisav is the battle between Torah and learning and davening and hands of aggression. And we will see that there are times in the life of the Jewish people that we've had to do what Yaakov did, that we pray and we study Torah and we take up arms. Mm-hmm. We take up the Yedei Aisav, the tools of Aisav. We take those up as well when we have to. They're not ours. That's not how we roll. But when we have to, we do. Mm-hmm. So it's a very critical phrase. The voice is the voice of Yaakov, the hands are the hands of Aisav. We need to know when we are deploying the hands of Aisav that that's not ours. It's not really our tool. That's not how we'll win, but we have to do it when we have to. So we have to maintain learning and davening along the way. I got a link recently from another group of soldiers in the IDF who are writing their own Sefer Torah. It's a battalion that's writing a Sefer Torah, and each of the soldiers gets to fill in a letter, and they were collecting for it, and I sent some money for it. You know, it's an absolute pleasure to be able to participate in exactly this phrase. The voice is the voice of Yaakov, Torah, and davening, but the hands are the hands of Aisav, and to see our people when we have to doing exactly that is very, very rewarding. So Yitzchok blesses Yaakov. What's the blessing? Behold, the smell of my son is like the smell of a field which Hashem has blessed. Now, obviously, this is the the smell of Gan Eden, a truly blessed field, right? And I foresee that the descendants will build the base of Migdash in Sion, and will offer up karbona sacrifices, reach licheach, sweet smells of sacrifices to Hashem. Yitzchok then gave Yaakov 10 different brachas, 10 brachas. May God give you the dew of the heaven, the fat of the earth, plenty of grain, wine. Let nations serve you. Let nations bow down to you. Be a lord over your brother. Let your mother's sons bow down to you. Cursed be those that curse you, and blessed be those that bless you. He gave him everything. Within those blessings, you pretty much have everything, right? He finishes the blessings, and Yaakov leaves the room. And as you see in many a Hollywood cartoon, one's going out, the other one's coming in. In that moment, Aisav comes in. He did not find what he was hunting for. He did not trap a deer and shecht it properly. He couldn't get what he came from, so he took his dog and slaughtered it.
Oh.
And he roasted up the meat. And he came in and he said, basically, sit up, Dad, and bless me. Yaakov felt and smelled as if Gehenna, hell, opened up.
Well, he just killed the dog.
And so he says, who are you? And he says, I am Aisav, your firstborn. And Yitzchok shuddered with fear, his own fear. Yitzchok felt that the smell and the sense of hell opening up in front of him was for him, because he had blessed the wrong one. And he was mortified. And he felt, did he bless the wrong one? And Ruach HaKodesh, the spiritual prophecy, came at him at that moment. And he said, no, you bless the right one. It's not you or Yaakov who deserves the punishment. It's Aisav the hunter. He has trapped you into believing he's righteous. You were deceived by him, and it is for him that the smell and the gates of hell are opening up. So Yitzchok tells Aisav, someone else was here before you. Apparently, you were detained by heaven, and I ate of what he brought, and I blessed him without knowing. What food did he serve you? Oh, it was delicious. It was like bread from heaven. It was fish. It was meat. And it literally was like the manna that the Jews would have, that would have any taste you wanted, right? It was definitely like that, the food for tzaddikim in the time to come. And Aisav said, "Damn that Yaakov! No wonder he extracted a blessing from you after giving you good meat. All he gave me was lentils in exchange for my birthright." Right? So Aisav is saying he got the birthright out of me by serving me food. He got the blessings out of you by serving you food. He only gave me porridge, but he gave you already meat, right? Look at the deceiver that Yaakov is, right? And Yitzchok said, what did you say? He bought the birthright? What was that? Tell me about this. Oh yeah, I came back one day from hunting and I was starving and I asked for the soup and he tricked me into selling the birthright. Oh, then I guess I blessed the right one. So of course Aisav is screaming, he's beside himself, he's can't you, there's no blessing, you have nothing left for me. I mean, what am I going to bless you? I've already blessed that he will be that his brothers will serve him. You're going to be his slave. If you're going to be a slave, anything a slave owns is owned by the owner. Anything you take a slave takes acquisition of automatically belongs to the owner. Mm-hmm. So what am I going to give you, right? And then Aisav pleaded and he cried, and he, finally his father had pity on him, and he blessed him. Your dwelling shall be of the fat of the earth and from the dew of the heavens. And so he gave him some blessings as well. As a result of Yaakov having taken the blessings, Aisav hated Yaakov with an unquenchable hatred and sought revenge. We have a halacha, a law in Jewish law that Aisav hates Yaakov. Now, when I say it's a law, it carries the weight of law. It carries the weight to know this is the reality. It's not changing. It's not going to change. Aisav hates Yaakov, and it's not an intellectual hate. It's not something that by education we can change them. Mm-hmm. It is a sina, a hatred that is a consummate hatred, and it needs to be destroyed from the world. As much as Aisav hated Yaakov, he still did not dare to murder him openly. The courts of the law of Shem and Aver would still mete out punishment for capital murder. But at the same time, Aisav was already plotting. When dad's gone, this is what's going to happen, right? So Rivka knew of Aisav's evil plan against his twin brother, and she thought it advisable that, maybe you should skip town for a little bit. Get out of Dodge while you still can, right? So she called Yaakov in and she said, the wicked Aisav is only going to find comfort in your death. That's how consummate this hatred is. So you need to leave. You need to get out. Go to my family in Padan Aram, to Besul's house. Remember, Besul was her brother, the one who was after the money, right? Her older brother. Stay there until your brother's wrath abates, and I'll call you. I'll call you when it's time. She never calls. She never calls. So Rivka then goes to Yitzchok, and she says to him, listen, I am sick and tired of Aisav's Canaanite women. You need to get a proper Jewish, you need to get a proper person, a proper wife for our son, for Yaakov. And I want you to go back like your father did. I want you to send him back to where the family is from and came from, and get a wife for him from there, from our family. And Yitzchok agreed. He called Yaakov and he instructed him, do not take a wife from Canaan. Rather, go back to our family, Avraham's family, back there and take a wife from there. And Yitzchok blessed Yaakov, affirming the blessings that he had given unknowingly. He now affirms knowingly, and he sends him off to find a wife. And this time he was blessing him with full knowledge, and he blessed him that she would be able to go out and find a wife. So this is a long story time, and we covered a lot of the details here, but this also is setting a pattern for what's to come. And we're going to see, when we talk about the stories of Chumash, Bereshis, and Shemais, they're all chapters of a bigger story, right? This idea of Avraham, when Avraham went down to Mitzrayim, was foreshadowing when the Jewish people will go to Mitzrayim. When Yitzchok is brought up an altar as a sacrifice, this is foreshadowing the self-sacrifice the Jewish people will be doing throughout Gullus. But that it's Mekadesh Hashem, that sanctifies Hashem, that all of that which we go through. And the fact that we'll go into Gullus, just like Yaakov is going down again, to find a wife, but that he'll come up with a wife out of all of this, is again foreshadowing that he will also go down to Egypt, foreshadowing that of the Jewish people. So all of these that we read them not as stories, but as our history and our future. All of those things combined. Yashikayach was a long class tonight, but Yashikayach for sticking through, and same time next week.
All right. Later on today.
Take care. God bless.